Alright, so in this video we'll be looking at list comprehensions in Python. So list comprehensions are a way through which Python implements two-dimensional arrays, and essentially list comprehensions are just lists of lists or lists within lists. So let's go ahead and look at list comprehensions in Python. So the first thing that we look at is how you can declare 2D lists. Is it because 2D lists are very important because they can be used to represent tables or tabled data whereby you have rows and columns, or they can be used to represent grids and so forth and so on. So there are different use cases of list comprehensions in Python. So let's start by declaring a variable called rather a list variable called matrix. So here we want to have a 2D matrix whereby we can have the values 1 through 9 as elements. So 1, 2, and 3 will be on the first row, 3, 4, and 5 will be on the second row, and 7, 8, and 9 will be on the last row, as it were. So what you need to do is you need to remember that list comprehensions are essentially lists within lists. So the way we go about it is to actually have an outer list like we did here. And then inside of this outer list, we can put the first row. So the first row, we are going to have 1, 2, and 3. Then we can move out of that particular list and have another list which is going to represent the next row, which is going to have 4, 5, and 6. And then we can move out of that list and have another list which is going to represent 7, 8, and 9. Right? So essentially, this is going to be your 2D list, as it were, and we call these list comprehensions in Python. So the process of actually outputting this is quite easy. Let me pull up the terminal real quick and show you how you can go about it. So you just have to let's invoke Python interpreter here. So the name of our file is list underscore comprehensions.py. Okay, we haven't been doing anything with it, we just declared it. So let's go ahead and print it. So we want to print matrix. So pull up the terminal one more time, and that's good. And you see that we get this list down here, right? So that's one way of declaring list comprehensions. But this method is not really the way you would want to go about it. Say if you wanted to declare let's say a 200 by 50 list comprehension, as it were, a 2D list that is representing 200 rows and 50 columns, you would actually need a better way to go about it. And fortunately for us, Python actually is a way which we can utilize. So maybe let's say we wanted to declare a Sudoku grid that is 9 rows and 9 columns, as it were. So the way we go about it is to have the variable there for our 2D list. Then here we can then specify our initial value that we would want to assign this particular list. So initially, maybe let's say we just want our rows and columns all to have zeros as their initial values. So we'd actually put the 0 right there, then have a 4. Then what we can do is we can use an underscore, which is essentially a nameless variable in Python. It's a throwaway variable, so there's no need to name it. So we can just say 4 underscore in range. Then we specify the range of values that we want. So we want this particular list to have 9 rows, is it? Sorry, 9 columns. So you need to remember that the most important thing that you need to remember with list comprehensions is that the inner loop is the one that represents the columns. Then the outer loop is the one that represents the rows, as it were. So here, this is going to be 9 columns. Then for the rows, we are going to have 4, then underscore again, because we are not going to bother naming that variable because it's a throwaway variable. Then we are going to have 9 rows as well, is it? So this is actually how you can go about declaring a Sudoku grid that you can then initialize with values of 0 right there, as you can see over there. So maybe what we can go ahead and do is we can just go ahead and call print on Sudoku grid, so that we can output the Sudoku grid, as it were. So pulling up the terminal and running the script, you see that we actually get that, right? Grid of zeros going on there, But of course, I think you'd agree with me that this is not really human readable. So the next aspect that we need to look at is to actually look at how we can make this print in a nice formatted way that is easy for people to read. Because just printing the entire thing is only good enough for debugging, or maybe for debugging, or maybe just want to see if you initialized it correctly, right? But if you want to format it nicely, there's actually a way we can go about it. So let's actually go ahead and look at that. So let's say printing a list comprehension. Alright, so what you can do is we can use two for loops. So what we can do is we can say for row in Sudoku grid. Then we are going to have for value in a row. Then we can have we can then call the print function right here, and we are printing the value. Then at the end, we are simply going to append an empty space at the end of each value, right? Then we can come here and also print a new line after outputting the values as it were. Alright, I'm getting that warning there. It's saying that my center is saying it's not closed here. Oh, it's because I'm missing an equal sign here. Yeah. So at the end, we are just putting an empty space. Then after that, we print a new line. Then it's going to go on to the next line. So let me just quickly explain what's going on here. So you're saying that for a row in the Sudoku grid, we want to move through that row. Then for that value in a row, we want to print the value, then put a space, then we move on to the next one, the next value as it were. So this is going to continue for, let's say our row, it is 9 elements, is it? So we're going to print each of the 9 elements with a space in between the elements. Then after finishing a particular row, we can then move on to print an empty space, then our loop starts again, going on to the next row. So remember, we have 9 rows going on. So it's actually going to iterate through the 9 rows by printing each element that is in each particular row as it were. So let's go ahead and run the script. Just clear out the console, then run the script one more time. So you can actually see that our grid is right here. Right, it's now printed in a 9x9 grid, typical of a Sudoku puzzle as it were. So this is how you can get a proper grid format using list comprehensions. Rather using two for loops, nested for loops for your list comprehension as it were. Then maybe let's go ahead and look at how you can use indices. So let's say using indices with list comprehensions, is it? Let's say we wanted to output a particular element that is in the grid as it were. So what we can do is we can also use two nested for loops, because remember that you need a way to access the rows as well as the columns as it were. So for I in range, then it's going to be for the range of the length of the Sudoku grid element, list rather, not element. Then for the inner loop, we are going to say for j in range, then it's going to be for the length, it's going to run for the length of the Sudoku grid. Then what we want to do is we are going to pass the value of I here. Then right there at the end is going to put a colon. I'm getting that error here, right? Then here we can then print we can have print rather, so that it's more readable. So you can say grid. Let's use the actual name. Let's just put it grid. Doesn't really matter. So grid, then we can put the value of I there, then we can put the value of j here, then we can equate this, because remember we want to format print the entire thing, so we want to show that this particular position on the grid has this value, so we can then put sudoku grid here, because this is the actual value, right? So sudoku grid, then here we have I, and here we have j. Yeah. Okay, let's test this out. I hope I didn't make any mistakes here. So maybe let's just have a clearing out the console, then running the script. Yeah, so there's the output right there. So you see that initially we first get our sudoku grid in its intended format, right? We are formatting it nicely here. Then here you see that we have the output for when we want to output what value is in each particular cell of the grid, as it were. So on grid in 0, 0 we have a value of 0, 0, 1 another value of 0, and so forth and so on. So that's how we can actually use indices to output the values inside of what? Inside of a list comprehension, as it were. So maybe something is going on with my mouse here. Alright, so yeah, I think this pretty much covers list comprehensions. So the most important thing that you need to know is how to actually declare a list comprehension. If you look at line 5, right, that's how you can declare a list comprehension. And you need to remember that with Python now, with the lists, the first inner loop, it pertains to the rows, and the second inner loop pertains to the columns. Then maybe we can just do another final example so that you can actually get the point. Maybe let's change this to something else. Maybe let me just copy out the code here. Copy the code and paste it down here. So maybe let's say we wanted a 9 by maybe let's say 10, or a 3 by 9 rather. So we want to have 3 rows and 9 columns. Sorry, 3 columns and 9 rows, is it? So we would put 3 right here. Then we can print, maybe let's change the name from sudoku grid to maybe some grid, right? So some grid there. Then we can clear out the console, then run the script one more time. So you see that some grid has these values of XXXS going on inside of it. Maybe it's not really helpful if I do it like this. So maybe let me just copy this so that you can actually see what we did there to show you the difference between the rows and the columns, as it were. So let me just put this one here, change this to some grid, and yeah, I think that's just about it there. So pull up the terminal, clear out the console, and run the script, and you should see that it's outputting there. So you see that we have 3 columns and 9 rows, as it were, is it? So that's important to realize that with list comprehensions, the first inner loop it pertains to columns, and this other loop it pertains to rows. And also, if you are going to give a default value, the default value you are going to pass it right here inside of the inner loop. Then the outer loop, you don't need to assign an inner value. A default value rather, because it's going to use the one that is inside of this inner loop right there. So yeah, I think that's just about it for this video. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys in the next one.